the results of this year's Climate Change Performance Index. And as you see here, as in previous year, the first three ranks remain empty. No country is doing good enough to prevent dangerous climate change out of our selection of the 58 countries with 90% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. Even the countries in the front, like Sweden, UK, and Denmark this year, are leaders without a perfect record on climate protection. Sweden is here profiting very much from quite old policy measures. They started to have a quite high CO2 tax in the early 90s, which, for example, leads to the fact that they now nearly have no emissions left in the building sector. The most of the oil and gas heaters are gone away. And so this is unique, I would say, for a country who really have to heat a lot, as you might know. However, national experts highlight also that Sweden needs to reach net zero emissions by 2030 if they want to be aligned with the Paris targets and want to be aligned with 1.5 degrees. And for that, they really need to tackle one problem in Sweden, which is energy efficiency, and a stringent target here is proposed from the experts. Few words on the UK. Audrey already mentioned the strong new climate target, which is not measured here, but they have done also other quite interesting things. They doubled the climate finance to support developing countries, and they plan to phase out new fossil-fueled cars by 2030, which is, compared to other countries, quite ambitious. In the next slide, we see the performance of the EU countries. The EU itself, we also measure it. The performance of the EU is one of the winners this year. It jumps 6 spots compared to last year on rank number 16. On the positive side, we definitely see the announcement of net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, which is, from the experts' point of view, not in line with 1.5 degrees, but at least it was a good step in the right direction. And the increase of its 2030 emission reduction target up to minimum 55%, maybe more. Audrey explained to you this date of act in a moment. And of course, we have to see, and you see also the highly divided EU also in our table. You have 4 countries in the front, but also 5 countries rated very low here. We find, for example, Poland and Hungary among the very low performing countries, and both have in the moment increasing emissions and play and continuously regressive role in the EU negotiations by blocking climate policies and lowering the EU overall climate ambition. Moreover, the veto of the EU budget and recovery fund could be very problematic this week to reach an agreement about the increased climate target within the EU. So let's see whether these countries can move, and if they will move and if they will agree, they will definitely climb up in the ranking, because this is a very important step for the international negotiations. On the G20 performance, on the next slide, the G20 has altogether 80% of the global greenhouse gas emissions, and let me focus here on 2 major emitters here. India is ranked again under the top 10 of the index on number 10. In India, we still see relatively low emissions, but of course we see the emissions rising, coming from a relatively low level. Especially there are a lot of new coal power plants in the pipelines, and experts hope that not all of them will be built, and hope for this relatively good rated renewable energy policy framework for India. We have, especially for solar, great plans for a lot of extension here. And on the other side, we also see that the prices for solar and wind are decreasing that fast that even though if the government will support new coal power plants, maybe the market will prevent that they will be built, which would be quite important for the climate and for the emissions of India. And experts demand from India to follow China and South Africa to also announce long-term mitigation strategy. And this strategy then should include a post-COVID-19 green recovery plan. It should reduce fossil fuel subsidies and, last but not least, to a certain extent, and phasing out coal power. When it comes to my home country, Germany, slightly improved in the ranking from 23 to 19, still not a climate champion. In the upper middle, the greenhouse gases and the energy use per capita is comparatively high in Germany. Still, we are still a coal country, but we see emissions in the last 2 years start to decrease, especially due to the shutdown of several coal power plants in Germany. But we have a lot of problems, especially in the transport sector, but also in the building sector, where we nearly don't have any functioning policies in the transport sector regarding emission reduction, and also the renovation rate of our old buildings needs to increase a lot. Last but not least, I would like to say a few words on China. China slipped again into the group of the low-performing countries. We see a mixed picture in China this year. On the positive side, we see the already mentioned announcement by the government to peak emission before 2030 and reach net zero emissions before 2060. But we have to wait actually for details and the implementation of these targets to really say whether they go then in the right direction or not. What is China already doing? It's rapidly deploying non-hydro renewable energy sources and is in the process of developing a national emission trading scheme, which then will hopefully limit the emissions from the power sector, which have a major part in China. So we see then on the negative side, especially there, the low rating for the greenhouse gas emission category. But if this long delayed cap and trade program will be launched next year and the government publishes more information regarding how it will reach net zero emissions, China could rise again in the next year's climate change performance index. Saying that, I would like to give the word to Stefan, who would say a bit more about the laggards in the index. Thank you.
Oops, sorry. Thank you, Jan. Stefan Singer from Climate Action Network International. We are representing about 1,500 CSOs, NGOs worldwide to work on climate. So we are very happy to have been worked on the CCPI for a couple of years, this Climate Change Performance Index, and I will focus for CAN on two issues. One, addressing the laggards,